there.
I got I'm running a little behind on contracts. I literally have 5 screaming memes I got to deal with after this meeting and before I do contracts in Baltimore at 1 o'clock. It's going to be a long day. There's a really cool thing that floats around. It's called the Code of Ethics. I'm going to send it out to you. You might want to take a gander, okay? One of the things it says is that we are supposed to treat our other fellow agents with respect and ethically. Now, who has done my contracts class?
All hands should be up.
All right, what is my golden rule?
The buyer says, the seller says, I, me, mine.
No, I, me, or
Oh, no,
mine.
I, me, mine doesn't exist.
Right. The idea being is, and I had that script on my desk when I was selling, because you get a chippy agent on the other side attacking you, and you get defensive, and all of a sudden, it's I, you, me, and all of a sudden, the agents are fighting. And let me tell you how I spent my weekend last weekend.
Tell us, Mom.
Talk about it.
Dealing, and this is the actual emails, okay? This is crazy land, okay? My agent doing a second deal, selling a rehab house. Experienced agent sells 50 houses a year for this rehabber, okay? They're big dogs. They don't take any prisoners. Very simple. Buyer is from sub-Saharan Africa, so we kind of have some cultural understanding, U.S., Maryland law kind of things, heavy accent. So we got some issues there, plus first-time buyer scared to death. What a great scenario, right? So, when my phone blows up Saturday morning and my agent says, look at the emails I sent you, and I'm like, okay. So they were going back and forth about repairs. Apparently the home inspection did not go well. There were a number of repairs, totally freaked out the buyer. So my agent says, and basically they get into the issue of the addendum says that repairs have to be made and the buyer has to have a reasonable amount of time to re-inspect. All right, what's the legal definition of reasonable? I don't know. So my agent says time was not an issue for the repairs to be done. Wednesday's not sufficient time for re-inspection and feedback, let alone any additional quick fixes. Okay. Seller's agent comes back and says, are you a contractor? That was an extensive list of repairs, especially for a contractor who was working on many other houses. We want to do the work, and we don't have to do it on a certain day. I say this as someone who does at least 70 deals a year. Okay. My agent comes back and says, quite frankly, you need to delete the statement, seller is easy to work with. You're definitely losing touch with the emotional stress of the buyer. Right. Seller's agent comes back and says, ding, ding, there is a problem. You are not doing a good job of helping your buyer deal with the stress. Your buyer, who does not understand this process, needs your help to relax them, explain how the contract works, blah, blah, blah. My agent comes back and says, please go take several seats.
Oh, no.
I know your type. You don't only lack experience, you lack decorum and emotional intelligence. How does your approach show experience? I might not be in the business as long as you, but I'm sure I have the better way of reviews, have better reviews than you. You have loads of self-reflection to do. Who starts with a 40-line inspection addendum the week of closing? Not smart. Listing agent comes back and says, is this an effing joke or something? Seriously, dude, you are an ass clown. You have sold one property in 1 year, and I can't even find your dumbass online. You say you have better reviews than me, but I can't find you, and I have 98 positive reviews and over 500 sales. I can't even believe I'm having a conversation with your dumbass because you're not even qualified to talk on the same level as I am.
Come see me.
Do your effing job and take care of your buyer. Maybe one day your broke ass will actually do a sale or two and make some money. But until then, don't tell the professionals how to do their job. Fill out the effing release and send it to me if you don't like it. You, sir, are an embarrassment to the industry and are perhaps looking for a participation trophy. There are no participation trophies in real estate. I'm not making this up, folks. I am not making this up.
Monty, are these two men?
Yep.
I knew it.
Oh, sorry.
Right, because they didn't say bitch. But the point is, do you see how off the rail this is?
And he's sending it to
Where-
you, and it's in print.
There's
no
Well, the point is, I'm coming in at the tail end on Saturday trying to pick the pieces up after these guys have totally bludgeoned each other to death. Where is the talk about the buyer's interest and the seller's interest in trying to solve a problem? It's all gone because it's now personal between the agents and it's all about them. And the seller and buyer have gone totally by the wayside. So when I talk about Monty's golden rule of real estate, the buyer says, the seller says, and your wife will tell you that's the best advice I ever gave her, right?
Yes, she will.
Karen says, best advice I ever got. When you got, the last thing I read, it's like, okay, totally nuclear. But if you just keep coming back and say, the buyer, the buyer, the buyer, it ramps down the emotion. And it takes the personalities out of it. And it takes discipline. That's why I had it on my desk. Because it takes discipline when you have to put up with this kind of BS. So it's really important that when you get in a chippy situation, you remember the script and stay focused on your client and ignore the other agent if they're being a jerk. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is the
And do your
deal
best.
still on?
It did not so. Hard to believe. Couple other things real quick. I was notified last week that Berkshire Hathaway is no longer, the agents are no longer allowed to make copies of deposit checks because their emails have been hacked. Okay? And their clients are being hacked. And they are not allowed to collect deposits either. So the agent came back to me and said, what do I do for compliance? I don't have a copy of the EMD. And I said, well, who has it? The title company. And I said, well, did they send you a
Receipt.
Yeah. I said, that's it. As long as you get the receipt from the title company, you're good to go. And remember, if you're a listing agent, it's your ethical duty to your client to follow up, to make sure the title company gets the deposit. I had an agent get a slap on the wrist because they didn't follow up for 2 weeks to see if the title company had gotten the EMD. Also, we don't do credit reports here, which is good, but basically, first of the year, credit report laws changed, and you cannot get social security numbers, salary, other information. Most of the companies that do this now, the only thing that you get is their name, email address, and the amount of rent for their rental they want to rent. And you send that to the company, and then they email them directly and do everything, which I'm tickled to death with, not to have that information flowing around. Last thing real quick, GBBR is doing a review of forms. I talked to the attorney there, and I said, I don't think your 2004 forms are quite in compliance with MAR and stuff. And he's like, oh, yeah, I think so. I'm like, I don't think so. So I went and checked. Their security deposit addendum says 3% per annum. Wrong. So if you have, always go to MAR first. And only if you cannot find the form in MAR, go to GBBR. They have a group that's trying to clean this up, but I guarantee it's going to take a while. As I said to the attorney, I said, anything that you duplicate with MAR, get rid of it. Why have the headache? So we'll see. So that's it, kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm.